Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you all this afternoon. I think we can officially say that for everyone on the webinar. My name is Lauren Hornet, and I am the Director of Programs for the Rocky Mountain Market at Enterprise Community Partners. It's an honor to be here. I joined the team about 3 months ago, so I know I haven't met all of you, but I hope to meet all of you kind of in the near future. I think as everyone here knows, affordable housing providers in our region specifically are facing a growing range of climate-related risks, from acute disasters like wildfires and flooding to chronic stressors that impact building performance, resident safety, and day-to-day operations. There's really quite a mix in there. And I think many of you, if not most of you, also know Enterprise. And you know that we've been working alongside other national, regional, and local partners to help create and support and build more resilient organizations and more resilient properties and portfolios. While we've been doing this work for many years, we really dug in back in 2023. And I know some of you that are on the call today also joined us for our Resilience Academy, which was a training series for our nonprofit housing providers across the Western states. We also helped to create the Chaffa Multifamily Electrification Hub with our partners at Energy Outreach Colorado, Group 14 Engineering, and others. And we joined forces again to add a resilience focused model and a toolkit last year as well. Since that time, we've been lucky enough to secure resources to provide free technical assistance to members of that cohort in partnership with Energy Outreach Colorado. We've more recently expanded that support to other organizations working in Denver Nest neighborhoods and other neighborhoods that are most vulnerable to the rapid change and displacement we've been experiencing. And also last year, we hosted the Ready and Resilient Convening, where we brought together over 70 partners working in affordable housing, climate resilience, and energy efficiency for a day of learning and strategy sharing from across Colorado and Utah, from the changing climate risk landscape and its impacts on affordable housing. So, we're all focused on trying to fund those pathways and build practical tools and tactics to support long-term affordability. So that's something we're super proud of. We know we have a lot of support and a big group that's working towards that. And we're excited to have many of you today. So with that, today, we are excited to kick off a 3-part virtual training series for this year. This series is really designed to help our partners build resilience at every level. So starting kind of with the internal operations of the organization and emergency response, to really looking at resilient building design and standards, to property-specific risk assessment, as well as mitigation, planning, and implementation at the portfolio level. So we're really wanting to hit it kind of from all 3 levels, and you'll see that reflected in each of the 3 webinars that are coming. So today, we're going to start with that by walking you through some of the latest updates to the Enterprise Green Communities criteria that was just released, and really get specific about how these resources can help you to integrate health, safety, and well-being into your design, operations, and asset management, really with a key focus on residents and how to strengthen resident outcomes and support their long-term housing affordability. So that's going to be a really key part of today. So before we get started, I really wanted to take a moment to thank our sponsors. First and foremost, we have First Bank, who is a big supporter of our work, and probably many of you all on this call across Colorado. They are our sponsor for today's event, for one part of the series, and so we're really thrilled to have their partnership and support for today. And then I also wanted to mention KeyBank, who supports our work in Colorado and Utah, and who has really been supporting the programmatic efforts of our climate resilience work across these 2 states. So thank you so much to both of those sponsors and supporters. Before I turn it over to our trainers and before I introduce them, I also wanted to give a big shout out to my colleague Martina, who is our master Zoom operator, data whiz, and just such a key part of our team in the Rocky Mountain region, and has put a lot of work in today's webinar. So Martina, thank you so much for everything. And with that, I would love to turn it over to our wonderful trainers and our colleagues, Ray and Shelby. Ray is the Senior Director of our Building Resilient Futures team and work, and Shelby is an Associate Director of Building Resilient Futures. So thank you both of you for helping us to bring these resources and bringing your expertise here locally, all the way out west. And with that, I will turn it over to Ray and Shelby to get us started.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Martina. Thanks to our friends in the Rocky Mountain region for inviting us today. It's a real pleasure to be with you all and to share a little bit about what we've been working on with our Green Communities criteria, and then talk a little bit more about what we've been learning through some of the resilience academies and some of the other workshops, trainings, and learning modules that we have rolled out in your area. So really a heartfelt, appreciative thank you for inviting us today. A quick run through on what we're going to cover over the next, go back there, thank you, 55 minutes. We're going to start going over the objectives. Then we'll talk a little bit about the orientation of the 2026 criteria. I know many folks are familiar with the program, maybe not with the newest version, but with previous versions, but it's helpful to give a little orientation as to the how and why of the program, which I think helps guide how we think about health, resilience, energy, all of the topics that we talk about in the program. And then Shelby and I are going to take a sort of a hand-guided tour through each of the criteria categories and call out specific areas in which resilience makes an appearance. We won't be spending a huge amount of time going over each of these items. Our goal here is to create these sort of mental notes for you as you engage with the criteria manual to understand exactly where to go based on your interests and where to go as you think about resilience, and where you go specifically when you think about resident engagement and community engagement. We'll pause because we will cover a lot of content and make sure that if there are any questions about the orientation or how to navigate, we get those. And then Shelby and I thought it would be useful to end with a little bit of a summary of some of the resilience themes, topics, ideas, concepts, challenges, opportunities that have come up that we've learned over the last few years. You may know them, you may be new to them, or you may say, I feel seen. Somebody is experiencing what I'm experiencing. All of those are good and appropriate reactions, but we want to make sure that everyone's working from the same playbook so we can advance resident health and thriving in this changing climate. So we'll go from there. Before we proceed and get into objectives, Shelby, I didn't know if you wanted to say hi and just sort of chime in. And I feel weird having you start speaking in the middle of the presentation, so why don't you say hi?
There's no need for Ray to feel weird. Hi, everyone. Really pleased to be here with all of you and with our enterprise team. Shelby O'Neill here. I'm calling in from Boston and look forward to talking about resilience strategies and the criteria today. And we'll be sure to make sure that we share resources and ways to connect with us after today, in case that's helpful. But Ray, why don't you take it away?
Super. Thanks so much, Shelby. You slide us onto the next slide, Martina. So the goal for today's session is to understand how resilience manifests in the 2026 criteria and understand how the criteria operates as a tool for helping project teams achieve their sustainability, resilience, health, energy reduction goals. Understand how you can implement resilience strategies across the 2026 criteria with a key focus on where and when residents can plug in and have a sense of agency, and then to apply some key learnings from resilience practices that we've been hearing in the field over the past 5 or so years. Before we go ahead and get started, we have a poll, which Martina is going to put up on the screen. We invite everyone to go in there and have a vote. Which of these barriers presents the biggest challenge for incorporating resilience in the design, construction, programming of your properties? And then you can choose from the list below. You can only choose once, but please let us know.
I realize it may be difficult to choose just one, but thought we'd just get our hamster wheels running.
Okay. Martina, I don't know if you feel good about votes that have come in, but let's say we'll close it in another 15 seconds.
That's where most folks have participated.
Okay. Close it when you're ready. Funding. All right. Well, the evergreen problem of funding continues to be a problem. And hopefully we'll talk about some ways to get through that. One other quick note before we go ahead and get started, Martina, you can go to the next slide. Shelby and I are obviously very comfortable and casual at presenting this, so we don't want folks to feel like you don't need to wait till the Q&A. You can type a question into the chat. If you want to raise your hand, we'll at the next break stop and collect your question then. This is meant to be an informational session, and I think Shelby and I would like to operate it as informally as we possibly can. So please, if you have a question, you can raise your hand, put it in the chat. You can ask Martina to ask us. Any way you want to get those questions asked and answered, we'd love to field those for you. Thanks. So the 2026 Green Communities Criteria has came out at the start of the year. Every 4 to 5 years, we go through and we bring some folks together and we update our standard. This is important to maintain relevance with environmental industry and policy trends, to track with advancements that have been made in technology and materials, and best practice in the industry. And then we're also hearing from stakeholders that it's time to sort of push us a little further in the field. And so 2015 was a year of update. Can you go to the next slide? So while last year was a year of update, the core principles of the program are where we start every update cycle. And we sort of sit together as a team and we speak with some external folks and we say, these are the principles that we've maintained. Do these still seem relevant and practical and pragmatic for where we are? And the answer was yes. This sort of tried and true of green communities has not changed, and it has not changed for the 20 years of the program. Our goal is to create a program that is achievable for all affordable housing development across construction types, geographic locations, and whether you're new construction, substantial rehab, or moderate rehab. Our program prioritizes cost-effective improvement strategies while maintaining some space for innovative technologies and things that are further field, or maybe a little bit in the future. But cost-effective improvement is really where our program is centered. Our program is centered on the three-legged stool that you're used to hearing about, with health, economic, and environmental benefits, the way sustainability standards often are. And then the last two bullet points here kind of go together. We're looking to create a standard that's technically sound and rigorous, that's based and rooted in performance, and that's measurable and verifiable, whether through document review or on-site inspection. And we think that this sort of approach has been really pragmatic for partners going through, and it's helped create one of the best sustainability standards in the field, even though we're just focused on the affordable housing space. Next slide, please. I won't spend much time on some of our webinars. We go into a lengthy detail of how we updated our standard and walk through the nitty-gritties of the groups and the time and those sorts of things. But a couple things to point out is the process took over 12 months, beginning near the end of 2024. And a couple things that we really did in this update that were particularly relevant. We spent a lot of time with some focus groups on health, energy, and resilience. And we did extensive outreach with our Enterprise has a development office based in the Mid-Atlantic, Enterprise Community Development. We did a lot of work with that group to understand, as owners and operators of affordable housing, how do you accomplish your results? And how can we make our standard more relevant, more practical, more pragmatic for your users? So we got enhanced feedback on each of our topic areas, and then enhanced feedback on how it lands with residents and communities. Next slide, please. Oh, if you're familiar with our standard, this is going to look very familiar to you. If you're not, this may look familiar because I think a lot of the topics that are in our program are topics that are seen across the affordable housing space. We have things like site design and location and neighborhood fabric, making sure that housing is rooted in the community it's built in and networked across into the community that it is. You know, we think of this like the warp and weft pattern of a fabric. You know, it's really like putting housing into that fabric. We have things like water, energy, and materials. So reducing the amount of water the project uses, making sure it's good quality, making sure water is not going where it's not supposed to. Energy usage, how to reduce the amount of energy used in a project. It saves money. It creates a better return on investment. It saves money for residents. It's also more resilient in the case of a significant storm event. Material selection, we learned during the COVID-19 pandemic that people do spend a lot of time inside, and they do spend a lot of time in their homes. And as people work remotely more or have alternative family structures, it's important that the indoor air quality and environment is primo to make sure that everyone is safe. A couple other things that I think bookend our program, which are really important. The integrated design component, and we're going to be spending some time there with Shelby in a moment. Making sure residents have agency to say what they would like in their communities, making sure that developers can hear that information and can adjust their plans with their design team to meet those needs. And then operations, maintenance, and resident engagement. At the end of the day, all of this planning, all of this work, all of this engagement isn't going to matter a hoot if the people who are operating the building don't know how to operate, how to change filters, where to go for replacement parts, what to do with the first series of questions that come up if you're dealing with a hot water tank or a hot water system. So really making sure that everybody knows how the building works, how decisions were made, which can help partners move through that effectively. What we've seen as this process has unfolded for us over the years is improving resident outcomes. We see that residents save money on their electric bills and their utility costs. The health of the building of residents improves, and then the buildings are also safe, more safely operated and more comfortable for residents. So we are in the sticks and bricks business. We do deal with buildings, but we do ultimately see us being in a position where we're trying to help residents thrive. Next slide, please. One of the novel things in the 2026 criteria, which is different from previous versions of our program, is we kept hearing early on in our engagement in 2024, these three topics that kept coming up: energy, health, and resilience. Energy, primarily in the reducing energy usage, costs, and emissions. In the health aspect, enhancing resident health and well-being, making sure that people felt safe, their buildings were quiet, they could really thrive there and live the life they wanted to lead. And then, as I mentioned, resilience, the significant storm events happen. The climate is becoming a little bit more chaotic. So making sure that the building was able to withstand significant storm events and disasters as best they can, so residents can continue to thrive. So as we kept hearing this, we convened these focus groups, but then we took it the next step. In our criteria manual, we actually, these little icons that are on the screen pop up throughout our criteria and standard. So that way you can see as a practitioner, you know, I am particularly interested on resilience, or I'm particularly interested on health, or I care about this topic, but I'm not sure how it maps to everything else. Well, now our program is completely networked according to these different themes which pop up throughout the 8 categories. So Shelby and I are going to speak through it today and use this as kind of our armature to get through it. But as you go through the website, as you go through our manual, as you go through our checklist, these icons will pop up, and you'll know that to the enterprise folks, this is an area where we could see and experience some resilience benefit, some energy benefit, or some healthy living environment improvements. And we'll go to the next slide. Great. And if you don't know, our program is co-certified with the folks over at the International Well Building Institute. We've been partnering with them for over 5 years to create a pathway through our program that ensures that projects that meet our standard will earn the well standard as well. So this is a unique partnership for us. I think it's a huge, we really appreciate their partnership in being able to bring this to the affordable housing space in a really pragmatic way. And it means that by using the Green Communities criteria, you're also demonstrating a focus on health and resident wellness above and beyond a standard certification system. Go to the next slide. I'm running a little long in the tooth, but so I'll skip impact today. We'll go to the next slide. So Green Communities criteria, this is it in a nutshell. We can share the slides via PDF, but all of this information is on our website as well. We are focused on affordable housing. We do manage all of these different project types from new construction through moderate rehab. We do multifamily, single family. The way our program is set up is we have a series of mandatory criterion depending upon your project type. And then you need to earn an optional point total. For new construction, it's 40. For rehabilitation, it's 35. So this a la carte approach ensures that we create a proper baseline for all projects to meet. And then the optional point threshold allows projects to be opportunistic based on what your goals, what your community's goals are, what technologies you seek to implement in your project, go from there. And then we have 3 levels of certification: Green Communities certification, Green Communities Plus, and the Green Communities Plus Zero Emissions. Those all refer to various levels of advanced energy performance within the program. We're not going to spend very much time with that today, but that's something we can dig into in a different session. Next slide. Excellent. I'm going to turn it over to Shelby, my partner in crime. She's going to get us going into the criteria manual and start with the first few categories as we lift up resilience as an area of focus. And we'll also spend a little bit of time explaining where residents have the opportunity, or residents or potential residents or community members have the ability to step in and create an intersection point with your development team. So I'll turn it over to Shelby.
Thanks, Ray. Great. Well, that was a helpful segue, and I really like the bricks and sticks, or sticks and bricks phrasing. We talk a lot about sticks and bricks, but I think we like to say that we are in the people business. So really pleased to be here to talk about resilience in that framing. Okay. So as we know, our changing climate really represents global challenges with local effects that are felt by people and communities and infrastructure. Climate hazards that impact people and homes are, of course, driven by a region's geography, including elevation and also changing climate patterns. As Ray shared, resilience now in the 2026 criteria embodies one of the 3 major themes. And I'm going to go into the strategies to incorporate resilience to really benefit residents of affordable housing. And these are threaded throughout all of the 8 categories. really focused on ensuring that the homes we build are better equipped to protect lives and preserve homes and prevent displacement. Next slide, please. Great. So I shouldn't be introducing this slide, you all the experts, but I wanted to orient us to the state of play of climate hazards in the Colorado and Utah region. So I won't go into great detail, but as I can imagine, we're all familiar here. These are really the top hazard concerns that we hear from partners in the Southwest. Drought, beginning with drought over the past 30 years, I think Colorado specifically has experienced exacerbated drought conditions. Wildfire is, of course, becoming a bigger concern. It's estimated that there are, on average, 1,000 wildfires every summer in Utah. Floods can also be the most destructive natural disaster for lost lives and economic loss. Extreme heat and heat waves pose health risks to people of all walks, particularly older persons, but also strain energy resources. And I will just note, I think we also recognize severe winter weather, particularly in Colorado, as a challenge. So how do these impact developing affordable housing? We can move on to the next slide, please. So climate change related events really have a multitude of negative impacts. Just a few are cited here, but we know that housers in this industry are concerned about higher insurance premiums as insurers factor in increased risks. You certainly all shared that funding is of great concern. This also, when we're speaking about costs, these climate hazards contribute to greater cooling costs, which is a financial burden for households and families. Utility shortages can really also put people at risk and increase property operating costs overall. And certainly imminent threats for emergency disasters like loss of property and the displacement of communities that are associated with generational economic impacts. So today I want to emphasize, though, that we are really capable of preparing for these impacts. These are big challenges, but we've been working with partners in your region, and we're developing tools to combat the effects of climate change together. And this can look like lower energy burden and utility costs that propel better health, safety, and comfort outcomes, and overall improved resident outcomes. It can look like investments in affordable home preservation and housing stability that are stronger and safer investments focused on the future. So how do we get there? Well, I'm going to start today by talking specifically about some strategies and tools within the 2026 criteria. So next slide, please. I'll kick us off with category 1, our integrative design topic. And really, to sort of frame integrative design, this is a holistic approach to green building. It's a pillar of green communities and successful development in general. We know that information gathering supports the creation of project goals by understanding all aspects of a site and community, which of course includes identifying climate hazards. And the 2026 criteria in general offers an enriching process for information gathering at the community and site level and supports all teams in evaluating their unique vulnerabilities to climate hazards. Specifically, and we'll go to the next slide, please. the Green Communities Project Priority Survey, Criterion 1.1. The updated version for the 2026 criteria asks all project teams to really establish a baseline understanding of their climate hazards and vulnerabilities. Could we just move to the next slide, please? Great. Oh, thanks. And we're throwing some resources in the chat as we go. But so this exercise, and I'm talking about the project priority survey that's asks all project teams to really establish this baseline across all aspects of a development, really necessitates that teams seek out local and up-to-date climate hazard data, that teams identify specific risks associated with hazards and applicable to a property, and prioritize risks in order to support a plan to address vulnerabilities through an optional adaptation plan, where design teams and residents can work together to co-design and prioritize the implementation of strategies to safeguard their community. And speaking of community, I will move on to criterion 1.7. So the project priorities survey includes kind of build up to criterion 1.5, which is that complete adaptation planning for resilient communities, which is an optional criterion. And the inclusive community engagement criterion 1.7 is a pathway that guides project teams in completing a cultural resilience assessment or convening a cultural advisory group of community members and residents. So really culture bearers to guide the design decisions for the construction of or preservation of affordable homes. And of course, these embody practical strategies for engaging and co-designing with residents to glean first-person experience and respond with design for the real needs of a project, which really more and more we know includes consideration of resilience. And really projects that include an inclusive community design process, whether through convening a cultural advisory group for the project or completing a cultural resilience assessment. This will really benefit the project from an increased sense of ownership as it reflects the needs of the community. And we'll see this in the design spaces and greater social accountability for upkeep and safety. Of course, those are important components for better communication and information sharing as part of the emergency planning process, which Ray will talk a little bit more about in category 8. I'll move us along to category 2 and a couple of topics here, but really, aside from a region's building vernacular and maybe a project-specific performance and health and resilience goals on site, understanding a building's community infrastructure can support residents in utilizing services within close and accessible and safe proximity when emergencies or chronic issues present themselves. So we'll talk a little bit here about criterion 2.1 that ensures that, or excuse me, 2.4 rather, on the next slide, where we're lifting up access to services at the neighborhood level. So this criterion reflects the necessity of support systems, as well as ensuring awareness of neighborhood amenities that will be having these elements more familiar. Typically, we'll make sure they're at the ready during a natural disaster or an emergency. And in 2026, the criteria is lifting up resilience hubs, storm shelters, cooling centers, and heating centers, all community resources for residents to access at that neighborhood level. And in addition to criterion 2.4, I'll also lift up 2.5, access to open space in the green communities criteria. This really promotes proximity to vegetated and shaded open space for physical and mental well-being. People living in urban areas, we know, are more likely to suffer disproportionately under the urban heat island effect, with limited shading infrastructure, and particularly neighborhoods with less resources that are historically redline communities. So we're trying to connect the dots here and ensure that everyone has access to green space to experience more reduced heat island impact and cooling opportunities. And I'll follow up or build off of this a little bit more on the topic of site design, starting with extreme heat. So certainly there are a lot of things we can do on site to impact a community and a building's resilience and durability. Extreme heat is, of course, relevant and one of the topics that we know to be of grave concern and danger in the Southwest region. Next slide, please. Extreme heat is, I think, technically defined as weather that is substantially hotter and or more humid than average for a certain location at a time of year. Extreme heat has become responsible for the highest number of deaths among all natural hazards that we're talking about, and is particularly dangerous for older populations. So in addition to urban infrastructure shortcomings, we know that affordable housing communities are more vulnerable to extreme heat due to lack of funds to cover increased energy costs associated with cooling and related utilities. We also know that high temperatures increase the need for mechanical cooling, which actually generates more heat ejected into the air from the greater use of the cooling equipment. So sort of a cyclical perpetuation of heat island. But investing in certain strategies that are part of this criterion 3.8, such as installing a vegetated roof, ensuring roofing material with a minimum of a 3-year aged solar reflectance index. Say that 10 times fast. So using lighter colored reflective roofing materials, as well as providing shading through vegetation, tree canopy, or other shade structures, and using light colored paving materials. Investing in any of these or a combination thereof can really make a difference. They can provide shade that cools pavement and provides outdoor comfortable space for residents to enjoy while reducing the mechanical load. And accessing this kind of comfortable space enables a multitude of health and social benefits for people. The next topic I'll move to is resilient design with respect to wind. We didn't lift up wind specifically in the region, but I do just want to call out because it can compound other concerns like wildfire, of course. Wind resilient design is really important. And we lift that up in the 2026 criteria in a few forms, but focused on really structural reinforcement and durable material selection. And utilizing these techniques can really protect residents and help keep homes livable after a storm. It can also lessen property damage, which means that money can be invested in resident priorities. When you're thinking about all the costs of impact by climate hazards and emergency weather events, that money can be better used to support residents. It's really profound. This criterion specifically lifts up a certification system called Fortified through an organization called the Insurance Institute for Home and Business Safety. Projects that receive a certain designation from Fortified in some states insurance commissioners require discounted insurance premiums for developments when they have appropriate designations. This is an interesting program for green communities to follow as it's been growing over the years and looks to be, a potential funding solution in some areas of the country, as we know that insurance rates are going up. It's really smart construction to help protect properties and hopefully encouraging cost benefits as well. It's a program that's available to both new construction and retrofit. Just scraping the surface here on site design with respect to wind, but encourage folks to look up Fortified and IBHS. I'll move on to the topic of flooding. I think we're familiar that employing strategies to reduce flood-related risk can really strengthen the resilience of sites and buildings and reduce lives lost, as well as, of course, the risk of insurance loss, and also contribute, of course, to enhancing the community resilience, which enables the return of residents to livable homes after a flood. I think sometimes some of the worst experiences happen after the flood, where folks no longer have their homes and communities and their networks to return to. So, though for green communities, all new construction projects may not be built in the special flood hazard area, and rehabs in special flood hazard areas have specific requirements that exceed this criterion. We do lift up flood design for other properties, given that we know all properties really do have flood risks associated from either stormwater, coastal flooding, wetlands, what have you. And I'll just lift up one of the options in this criterion, which is focused on how to design in a way that elevates critical systems and residential spaces to protect people and their homes from flooding disasters. And that's building to the ASCE 24, which is a standard for flood resistant design and construction. This is an optional pathway, but really sort of best in class for building to safeguard people and property damage. There's more to it than I'm sharing here, so I do recommend that even though we might be speaking with many of you in desert areas, that flooding is a challenge to respond to. And the final topic for site, before I pass it back to Ray to talk about other categories, is something that we've addressed sort of head on for the first time in the 2026 criteria, which is wildfires. And for good reason. We know wildfires are the #1 declared emergency in Colorado, if not elsewhere as well, but is also becoming increasingly prevalent in all regions, north, south, east, west. So we've focused on working with experts in the field to define some building guidelines to help protect buildings from fire, and particularly, from embers that can spread fire. I won't get too technical. Some of my colleagues are really experts in this corner, but essentially the idea is ensuring that defensible spaces are designed and created, and ignition resistant materials are used that really reduce the risk of damage. And some of these things are not as complicated as you might think, but thinking about stronger windows that are intact to protect the interior of blowing embers, ensuring that the roof assembly is a fire-rated roof, and using other non-combustible materials around a property can make a great deal of difference, which of course translates to saving lives and maintaining homes for people. Okay, so that will do it for site design. I'm going to hand it back to you, Ray, to talk about water and other topics for now.
Thanks, Shelby. Really appreciate it. We spent some time with those early, you can go to the next slide, Martina. We spent some time with those early categories because there's a lot in there about placemaking and about directly engaging with residents at the beginning of the construction process. We're going to move a bit more briskly through the remainder of the categories. Water conservation is, of course, a very important topic. I know water is a very sensitive topic, especially in Colorado. I'm not sure the situation in Utah and other states in your area if it's regulated as heavily, but I know water is something we're particularly focused on out there. The criteria here that we have listed all have resilience implications. The first three bullets, 4.1, 4.2, 4.4, and 4.6, I beg your pardon. And 4.1, 4.2, and 4.4 are all focused on reducing the amount of water used and making sure we're not creating leaks or using water out of cycle in the project. Criteria 4.6 is if a significant storm event is, I beg your pardon, trying to create a situation where non-potable water is reused. And then 4.7, criteria 4.7 is something, it's an optional criterion, so all projects don't need to do it. But if you are planning to create a building that has can weather a significant storm event, this is a very straightforward optional criterion to pursue. It's making sure that your residents will have access to potable water during an emergency situation. So in this category, there's a lot about being good stewards of the natural resource of water, of course, and that's super critical. But since we're focused really on residents and where they're plugging into the situation, if maintaining a safe environment where there is significant event to happen, you might want to prioritize criterion 4.7 to make sure that your property has enough water to withstand being offline for a few days. Martina, can you go to the next slide, please? Category 5 is energy is a huge part of the resilience conversation, of course. We have a lot to say. Can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you very much. So much like the water category, some of the resilience focused criteria in this category are about reducing the amount of energy your building needs. This has a lot of co-benefits, of course, because it reduces energy demand, reduces energy burden. You can have smaller systems in the project. You can have alternative energy sources, so you have renewable energy. Two things here that are really resident focused would be the ability to have access to backup power were a significant storm to happen. So this could be a generator, this could be other means of backup power were a significant event to happen. 5.9 is passive survivability. The principle here is your building has the ability to have natural ventilation and will not overheat if heat is a part of the event that you are experiencing. Again, this is a criterion that has direct impact on resident health and wellness. And if you're thinking of this from a standpoint of being strategic about how to earn optional points within the program, if heat is a primary concern in your area and residents are identifying their concern about significant storm events, much like access to potable water during a storm event in the last category, passive survivability would be a nice companion way to earn optional points through this category. Next slide, Martina. I'm not going to spend too much time in the materials category. The materials category is making sure that the indoor air of the project is as clean and fresh as the outdoor air. So this is about choosing very good materials, reducing the amount of toxins, and making sure that the provenance of those materials is as clean as can be. So that way all of the materials that you're constructing the project out of are as safe and free of toxins as possible. There are a few criteria in here that do have resilience benefits, but they are not as driven by resident engagement, and they would be something that you would want to take a look at as you were trying to create a cost comparison. So not trying to short shrift it, but we only have so much time today. Can you go to the next slide, Martina? Category 7, healthy living environments. So this is the other health related category, and it bounces together with the materials. There's a lot about indoor air quality in here as well. There are a few criterion in here which do specifically talk about speaking with residents and creating networks where they can give agency and have voice into the type of space that they hope their home can represent. But in lieu of going into specific criterion, I wanted to lift up that this category was reframed within our standard this year. So all of the 20-something criterion in this category have been put into 3 buckets. This first one, called a safe place to call home. This is focusing on resident safety. The next one is about creating a welcoming community. This is getting a little bit more into the resident feedback that we've been talking about. And then third category has a few criterion identified as being about well-being and empowerment. And so I think as you're mapping out how much time you have to do community engagement and outreach, you can scale which criterion you want to look at and focus on in the healthy living environments category based on your ambition, your time, and maybe the staffing capacity that you have to be able to execute on these things. And category 8, operations, maintenance, and resident engagement. So this category is about a lot of things. It's just such a wonderful picture. It's really about knowledge transfer and making sure all of the intent of the previous categories has been brought into the building itself for residents and operators to have. Can you go to the next slide? So one item in here is hugely important, the emergency management manual. It's important that we navigate disruptions and minimize the resident impacts on those disruptions. So this is about business continuity planning with a resident focus. It's about creating communication strategies to be able to get information to residents in ways that they can get it. And if they may run out of power or if their phones might go down, what are some backup options to do that? It's important to understand that when systems fail, you need to have a way to continue to get in touch with residents. And that's what this criteria is focused on. And then another feature that's really important is making sure that you're bringing this information to residents in ways that they can access it, whether you have a more senior population, whether you have a family population, whether you have a community that has a lot of languages spoken in it, and you might want to have things translated into different languages. It's really about bringing this material to people in the way that they can be most relevant to them and their needs. So we're calling out criterion 8.2, which is focused on emergency management, what to do, make sure you're prepared. But all of these other criterion listed here, the resident manual, the operations and maintenance information, and then the orientation and walkthrough is all also very important. All right, next slide. We're running a little short on time. This happens from time to time. Shelby and I have a lot to say. We're very excited about the new program. We think there's a lot of neat stuff in it and a lot of detail that we want to go into. With people's grace, we'll let people have, if you have questions on any of the previous 8 categories or the particulars of that, you can put it in the chat, but we're going to move forward into the end here to make sure that we get through some of the resources that we think are really going to be helpful for folks as they're considering resilience with a resident-centric lens. So next slide. This is where I'd pause and explain that the 8 categories work together to help you achieve your goals. Next slide. Great. So Shelby, we've got about 5 minutes to race through the end here. I don't know
Well,
if you want to prioritize one slide or walk through them all, but here we are.
yeah, just a couple things here. Thanks, Ray. Um, we can move to the next slide. And, we started off the conversation today asking you to share what your challenges and concerns are around climate hazards, and responding to these in an appropriate way for the sector. And I think, we can talk more about what these are, but I think it might be nice to leave talking about some of the solutions. And I think our hope is that your ears perked up at some of the topics we covered throughout the criteria, but also I want to highlight the Resilience Academy held, or excuse me, the Resilience team held a Rocky Mountain Climate Resilience Academy in 2023, from which we generated a wealth of really valuable information for how you all are approaching resilience for your communities. And, we heard over and over again that what I'm sharing here are really the biggest challenges that they're considering. And then next, if we could move to the next slide, I think I want to call out sort of some of the topics here that we I think are peppered into different strategies in the green communities criteria, but um, focusing on really engaging the community and residents at the beginning of the design work for a retrofit project or a new construction project is really critical to understand, what the risks are to the people living in the building or in the proximity of the building, and just the historical perspective of the area, and having residents participate in a meaningful way as really co-designers and leaders in this process ensures that objectives are really grounded in what matters, and that the project will be more successful in applying resilience and other important goals overall. So one of the things that's been hammered home to me from our technical experts here and technical experts, including all of you and folks in the field out there, is really, knowing where to start and how to prioritize comes from property risk and assessments, which really need to include residents, and be led in part by residents, as I was saying. And so that sort of helps create a North Star that allows people to prioritize what's most meaningful, in sort of balance with what risks are applicable to the project. And yeah, I think we'll be able to wrap up in a minute, but we did hear that access to information was a little bit of a challenge. So hope you all can take advantage of the electrification hub that we built out in collaboration with folks on the line as a resource for technical assistance and peer learning, and even financing tools. And something I'll just introduce is that not all resilient strategies need to be a huge upfront investment, right? I think just starting with information gathering and understanding your own community needs is significant. So thinking about maybe more localized strategies on the site, like shading, and sort of doubling down on design for resilience when you know that the property will be coming up to replace systems like windows and including operable windows, though that is not a small investment. But the short of it is, I think prioritizing is starts at the ground level, and I think folks are starting to understand that there's a planning process for resilience, much like there is for reaching zero emissions over time. So think about this as a process and a continuum, and we'll be happy to support along the way. Let's move on to the resources slide. We'll be sure to share out this deck, but these are some of the key resources that we think may be helpful to check out. And of course, feel free to reach out to us as needed for any support around the criteria. We'll be happy to help. So
Awesome.
I know we're at time. I'll hand it over to you, Ray, to close us out.
Great. Thanks, Shelby. Really appreciate it. As we wrap here, just want to offer a huge thank you to First Bank for their sponsorship of this webinar and for their sponsorship of our work generally, but specifically in the Rocky Mountain area. It's really helpful. A couple notes here to end on. I have a question here about balancing costs versus resident outcomes. I think you start small and you start with conversations with residents. You can get a lot of answers there as to where you need to spend your money and your time. And then there's a lot of new resources for understanding cost. We will have a cost study of our program coming out at the tail end of this year, which will help partners as well. And then Lauren, who introduced us and welcomed us into your virtual space, asked, is there a better time to engage residents as early as you can in the process, and then continually throughout. And then just be honest about what your project is dealing with in terms of cost considerations and prioritizing things. Development is always about needing to prioritize a lot of different factors and it getting a little messy. And that's true here too. But in speaking with residents, being open with them about the project, the space you're trying to create for them, is really the best way to build trust and to have them help you prioritize the decisions that'll make the project really thrive. So on behalf of Shelby and myself, thank you. Turn it back. I don't know if Lauren has anything to close with or Martina, but thanks for your time today and don't hesitate to reach out with questions.
No, I just was going to say the same, Ray. Thank you, Shelby and Ray, for sharing all that. There's so much information. Please know that we want to be continual resources for you after today, and we will follow up with the PowerPoint slide and the resources. And if you need anything, please reach out to us. And then I think the last thing I would share is that please also be on the lookout for our registration opportunity for the next two webinars. So we mentioned this is a series. So the first one is here in May. Our next one will be on June 24th. The registration is already up. It was the same site that you registered for this one, but we'll be sure to share that back out. That one's going to be focused on business continuity, so kind of maintaining your operations. That will be a presentation for the first half and then really a working session. We're going to dig into a toolkit and really try to get some individualized support during that session. So that'll be a great one. And then we'll have our third in July, and that one is TBD. So thank you all so much. We really appreciate you being here. Have a great afternoon, and we hope to talk soon.
Thanks all.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye.